Right, good morning. Hi there. This is Kevin Little from Simtrax. Thank you for joining us. There's a few more that are due, but it's 8:30, and I hope you've got a nice warm cup of coffee or tea. What we'll do is this session is only due, if you don't know already, for half an hour. So it's a brief session, and what we hope to cover is essentially going through the smart invoice management for SAP. And as hopefully you're all aware, this is the first in a series of three, going from essentially from now till May, where we'll be covering how our solution can provide smart invoice management for your SAP environment. So thanks again for joining us. What I'll do is I'll jump off the screen, and what I'll do is I will now start presenting. So I know there's a few more that are due to come, but I'll carry on with the aim of finishing just before 9 o'clock, and obviously opening up for questions as well. So it's essentially from an invoice management perspective, this is clearly a hot topic for those involved, and clearly is a bedrock for healthy financial teams. As we're all sort of aware, invoicing is a sort of a vital part of any organization, both ongoing and for growth, to help growth. So it's obviously essentially it's important to get it right. And over the last sort of almost half a decade now, there's been a real big push for e-invoicing, almost now regarded as sort of the basic level of invoicing, which is essentially getting rid of all the management processes, or at least emailing out and distributing invoices. So what we hope to cover today is sort of almost the next step. There's sort of a larger element at play, which is essentially document process automation, which encompasses a lot of things, and obviously invoicing is part of that. So really essentially what we hope to cover today is essentially streamlining an approach for your invoice management to essentially produce less manual intervention, and ideally that keyword which so many people hear today is automation, almost automation at all costs, which essentially, if done well, enhances productivity. So this is essentially the agenda. Obviously, I'll quickly highlight who we are, who Simtrax is, if you don't know already, and then highlight the challenges facing invoicing, and then go into a demonstration and outline sort of smart invoicing with our Complay suite, and of course go through your questions and answers as well. So without further ado, we'll jump in. So with Simtrax, we've been around for about 30 years now, just over 30 years actually, probably close to 35. We've got a large client base, and from an integration software perspective, we are a vendor that clearly supplies output document management solutions across the world as well. And as the images suggest, we cover all the major vendors and partner with the major vendors, but today we'll focus on SAP. So these are the two solutions that we have on offer. Essentially, one, the Complay suite, is the document management process solution, and the next one is Star Query, which is more of a business analytics built into Excel, which essentially allows organizations to pull out data where required and distribute it normally in Excel. So going to the next point, which is essentially document process challenges. We all come about this or in different types of ways in a different time periods, but essentially the ring around the red business critical challenges are all the different factors that Simtrax can help with. And today, during the session, I hope to sort of outline and demonstrate the green circled ones illustrated by the green dots essentially. And the main areas that we see as quick wins essentially, especially with Brexit on the horizon, are sort of compliance and regulations, new and improved ways of distributing those documents, and indeed the languages as well, which we'll be touching on. So essentially the aim of this is to overcome business critical challenges, which I've already sort of highlighted before, which is essentially the bottleneck of actually creating these documents and distributing them, as well as streamlining the document process altogether, and then keeping pace with changes. So, for example, as I mentioned, with Brexit, who knows what's around the horizon? So we'll touch on those bits today as well. So what I've got here is a quick rough diagram as to what a normal SAP e-invoicing process and collections is all about. And indeed the process involved and the challenges and indeed the needs. So clearly from a challenge perspective, collection times are vital, and then the most important thing that will be affecting a lot of SAP environments is the customers having their own XML requirements as well. So as you can see on the right hand side, the needs is essentially more focused around, in general, automation, so reducing costs, the transparency, keeping the security up, enhancing the performance, and indeed including the branding as well, which is normally historically quite difficult from an SAP environment. So I appreciate the audience are from a vast variety of sectors and job roles as well. So in essence, the next element is how Compleo or Simtrax can help with that. So the smart invoice management for SAP is very much essentially getting output out of SAP, enriching those business documents, making them transparent, allowing for approvals or digital signatures, and importantly, keeping that metadata as it goes through a lot of our solutions as well, including a repository, essentially the e-invoicing and e-collection, which is essentially pushing it out to end users or clients or part of the supply chain, and securely allowing them to sign and respond back into the system, whether that be in an archiving method or back into SAP itself. So that's sort of the presentation done. What I'm hoping to do as part of this series is cover off three key elements within our Compleo Suite solution. The first is formatting the documents. Then, as you can see in the bottom of future webinars, around distributing those documents, and then the automation of the document process. So the elements I'd like to highlight today is clearly getting an SAP document, formatting it, and then allowing it to be easily distributed. And what's fascinating about that is it plays into the next element, which is the compliance and regulation, where you can design scenarios in such a way, or templates in such a way, that you can pick and choose which ones you want depending on the process involved. And clearly with Brexit on the agenda, there's languages and typefaces as well. So as I highlighted, the distribution and automation will be in future webinars. And what I'll do is I'll quickly jump into our system and log into SAP. Connect. Oh, and let me just put it in lowercase, just in case. Log in properly this time. And then go into our demo solutions, enriching documents, and pick out the invoice itself. So what I would like to show you is this is an example of what's called Fly and Smile. So we're selecting the output device, Click OK. Yes, OK to that. And what you can see here is clearly the output from SAP. Now, as we're all aware, the spool file isn't the best. And what I'll show you by quickly running and quickly printing the solution is actually what it'll end up like after the whole Compleo suite has been involved in that. So I'll click print. That then prints, and behind the scene there's a server element which I failed to mention, which is the supervisor, and our formatting solution, which is what's called layout. So what you would see here is the old the output file, and essentially this is the interface where users can reformat those documents, include templates, which I mentioned as the scenarios, and essentially change the diagram around. So before I jump into that, what I will do is I will quickly hop into our emails, and the first one's come through here, checking the time, slightly out. So what you'll see is actually the output of that file. I'll just quickly scroll out. So essentially the big differences between these two, as you can see, there's clearly enhanced coloring so the QR code, and if I scroll further down, you can see it's been divided. This is clearly in English, and I'll touch on that in a bit later. And then sort of summary fields is including sort of unique elements around customer loyalty, which I'll touch on later, around essentially how popular they are as a customer and how well they use your solution, as an example. So essentially bringing in customer services or marketing within a standard invoice as well. And then, as you can see here, there's actually documents, sort of a contract that you can attach to an invoice. So the initial document within SAP is 19 pages, as you can see, and within this element of the PDF, it's been divided into a 3-page document, 2 being the actual invoice, and then the 3rd being the contract. So essentially, if that needs to change, the contract needs to change, then excuse me, then you can adjust it accordingly. So for the elements of this session, what we'll hope to sort of cover is essentially the formatting of that, and explain a bit more about how our solution can format this output and what it would look like and how easy it is to see and to change from an end user's perspective. So I'll dive into the UK version, which I didn't quite touch on. What I'll do later is show you different languages. So essentially, this output is recognized as different languages, is divided up according to the language, and is associated to that language of that region. So what I'll do is I'll quickly just highlight here is within this element here, there's clearly different segments around formatting. So you can see that the green lines, the values, the customer number, recognizing that. And what's important about the formatting of using a solution like this to format is you can put conditions and variables in, which are hugely important. So as you can see here, there's the customer number, it recognizes the customer number, and the language as far as processing is concerned. So when it actually gets run, it gets emailed out. So you can go in there and change the email settings so it recognizes the demo user. And indeed, if you were to add more, there's a long list of actions that can be added, whether that's using web service, our archiving solution, whether to email that out, or essentially create SAP function calls again, and then upload to SAP as well. So there's a large variety of functional actions you can take, and as highlighted, already, you can attach documents or concatenate documents, whereby essentially, in example, I've used a contract. It could be a PO that could be assigned to this invoice, which is always good. And then you can also, using the remote agent, which I won't do just yet, you can associate this to go to a certain user to actually play back their input back into the system on a PDF. They amend it as a document gets sent out, either approved or amended to be sent back for further approval, but that whole traceability can be tracked as well. So that's the layout solution. What I'll touch on here is supervisor, which is essentially the backend, which I'll go into later in later sessions. But effectively, what we've got here is we've got the document processing. Right. Okay, so that's obviously run and it's not appearing. So that's because that's clearly just run. So as you can see with the documents, which I've touched on, is it comes through in different languages, and it's recognized through the formatting of the document and the invoice itself, that clearly those documents are recognized, and this one clearly is in French. But again, it has the same layout, and as you can see here, it's a slightly different marketing spin on based on the actual usage as a client. And I've used this US contract, but it can change to a European contract or however you wish. So essentially, there's other language as well, and that's the demonstration. So essentially, it's pulling information out of SAP, it's reformatting with our layout solution. I've shown you a few sort of key elements around that. Obviously, as you can appreciate from the layout tool, clearly there's a lot of functionality that can be done here. So there's a formatting element, and what I didn't sort of touch on, these are run modes. So as you can see, these are scenarios that get created, or templates even, that are laid over this output spool file. So these are all the settings that can be done to adjust it, and feel free to obviously ask any questions now. I haven't seen any questions come through, but feel free to ask that. Oh, there is one here. Can you manually attach? So essentially, yes, you can, but essentially the idea behind this is more focused around automating this whole element. Could you stop sending invoices to ourselves, the customers, and the correct attachments process? Okay, so essentially, yes, we can. If I've understood the correct, I'll certainly get back to these questions at a later stage. But effectively, this is designed to automate and distribute the files. Yes, you can do this manually, hence sort of scenarios. You can manually run each scenario, but the idea behind this is that you choose the scenarios, you choose the templates, and it operates behind the scenes with the supervisor element coming into play. So what I'll quickly do here is jump out and continue. So in conclusion, we'll get to the questions at the end in a bit more detail. So in conclusion, this is a sort of step up beyond the simple manually attaching PDFs to an email. This is now allowing you to automatically convert invoices into secure PDF to be distributed, so the traceability is there, allowing other staff members to have access to that either via the web, which I mentioned, sort of the archiving element, which we'll touch on in future webinars around the automation and the distribution. So that helps people all having the same visibility on invoices. And then the important one is the seamless solution that can integrate with your existing solutions or processes, which helps essentially going from all things manual to the important elements being automated to being fully automated. So these are the call to actions, as I've mentioned before. There's future webinars. These will be distributed. And what I would like to do as well, and which will be passing out to our customers as well, is a workshop to just literally whiteboard some ideas around document process automation and how far our customers and our prospects and our hopefully future customers would like to go around automation to clearly enhance productivity. So what I'll do is I will open the floor to questions. I know there's been quite a few questions already. I'll certainly come back to you in relation to specifically around costs of the solution. But in essence, we've had a few of these questions around the most common form of this type of solution is essentially exporting straight out from SAP into Excel, which I think is almost underselling the whole solution. I appreciate from an invoicing perspective, it's a marvelous solution where you've jumped beyond just manually to automating to essentially creating a fully automated solution which keeps your invoice management systems within your SAP environment, allows proactive invoice payment reminders, retrieves sort of invoices within seconds, allows you with the archiving solution to essentially have a light footprint, essentially, rather than sending all these PDFs of varying sizes and quantities around, to essentially allow all types of users, whether they're within your supply chain. And that's the important thing to think about. With Brexit looming, it's important to recognize what things are at play here around how to automate this solution and how to keep up with change, because clearly there's going to be a lot of change with what's coming around the corner, and you know, Brexit planning around tariffs and legals and customs. You know, I've touched on a few scenarios, but there are clearly more. So I don't think there's actually any more questions at the moment, but feel free to, you got my details. Feel free to get in touch, and hopefully gives you an opportunity to improve your existing SAP processes with even things, quick wins such as digital signatures and approval systems to keep track and to allow users and almost your entire supply chain to approve and make recommendations and feed that back into your SAP system, should you wish. So, there's a couple of elements around how long it would take. This solution, as outlined, can work along with your existing processes, but actually the ROIs within our customers is significant. So the ROI, as a last note, normally operates within a 6-month window, which is quite phenomenal. And obviously you can download a free trial of Compleo Suite from our website, and we can certainly help you through that and potentially develop a proof of concept to support a business case. But again, the average ROI for our solutions, especially around invoicing and P2P, which is procure to pay, is under 6 months. So please do feel free to get in touch. This session essentially has come to an end. There aren't any further questions, but I'll certainly get back to those specifically around the questions that have come up around PDFs and PDAs. Yes, exactly. There's vast varieties of formats that we can output this document further to and distribute, which I'll get onto in the next sessions, or sorry, the next webinar. So please, as a almost a final reminder on, let me just go back if I can. Previous, just to remind you about the future webinars. So on the 29th of March, we'll cover off the distribution about the same time, so you can have a nice warm cup of coffee or tea. And then in May, when you probably have a a cool drink, hopefully. But we'll try and keep for the same times before 9 o'clock. And what we'll do, we'll obviously distribute any white papers along with this session around invoicing and how we get involved with your SAP environment. So I'll leave you to carry on with your day. Appreciate your time. And what I'll do is I'll distribute this via email, and hopefully we'll see you during the next series. But feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much.